In 2023, Russia opened a new corridor to China. It cleverly bypassed the Western blockade and continuously transported abundant Russian food to China. According to the cooperation plan between China and Russia, this channel will shoulder the important task of transporting 500 tons of grain to China in 2024. In the next 12 years, it is expected to help Russia transport grain worth up to $27 billion to China. So, where is this important strategic corridor? According to the investigation, the channel opened by Russia to China is called the New Overland Food Corridor. This project was proposed by China in 2012. The purpose is to strengthen infrastructure construction along the route, close the connection between the Russian Far East and China's Inner Mongolia, and significantly increase the volume of bilateral grain trade. The corridor starts in Manzhouli in northeastern China and ends in Zabaikalsk in Russia. Data shows that the design transportation capacity of the new China-Russia overland grain corridor reaches 600,000 tons each time, and the annual transportation volume can reach 8 million tons. This is equivalent to being able to accommodate about 128,000 train carriages, and 29 grain hub warehouses are planned along the project to ensure efficient and stable grain storage and transfer. More importantly, it used to take as long as 3 to 8 months to ship goods from Russia to China. Now, thanks to the completion of the new China-Russia overland grain corridor, the transportation time has been greatly shortened to less than 3 weeks. It is worth mentioning that although China proposed a new China-Russia overland food corridor plan a few years ago, unfortunately, this plan did not receive a positive response from Russia. For example, in 2016, a grain company in Russia's Transbaikal region signed an agreement with a Chinese company to build a grain terminal. The following year, the two parties deepened their cooperation and signed a long-term grain export contract. But in fact, Russia chose its more traditional shipping method to deliver food to China. We all know that although sea transportation is a relatively mature mode of transportation, its cost is very high compared with land transportation. This will also lead to a 5% increase in China's cost of purchasing Russian grain. China believes that Russia has not paid enough attention to the new Sino-Russian land food corridor. Therefore, in the subsequent time, China rarely mentioned this corridor plan. Until 2022, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine suddenly broke out, changing Russia's food pattern. In 2022, the United States and the European Union jointly imposed as many as 11 rounds of severe sanctions on Russia in order to support Ukraine. These sanctions include export bans on specific agricultural products from certain countries and restrictions on the use of certain fertilizers and pesticides. This series of measures not only weakened Russia's agricultural production efficiency and product quality, but also hindered its grain export channels. On the other hand, affected by regional conflicts, the originally busy Black Sea grain export routes have also encountered historic instability. According to statistics, due to the dual impact of sanctions and war, Russia had to interrupt cooperation with many stable trading partners, resulting in a decline of approximately 8% in grain exports. As we all know, each of the more than 200 countries and regions around the world has developed its own unique food supply system. These systems have become relatively stable after long-term practice and optimization. On this basis, any country's adjustments to its food supply system must be extremely cautious and complex. Russia has also had to adopt some innovative strategies to adapt to this situation as it seeks to expand grain exports. As a result, low-priced grain has become a major competitive advantage for Russia in attracting international buyers. But this strategy is not without cost. If Russia exports a large amount of cheap grain to expand its market, especially when transported by sea, it will significantly reduce its profit margins and may even bear the risk of losses. In Russia, under the shadow of war, money is particularly important, and they will naturally do everything possible to avoid any loss-making business. At the same time, China, as the most populous country in the world, consumes 650 million tons of food every year. In recent years, with the rapid economic development and the continuous improvement of people's living standards, China's demand for food imports has also continued to grow. Against this background, Russia realizes that through the China-Russia New Land Grain Corridor, it can not only avoid the high cost and uncertainty of maritime transportation, but also supply grain to China in a more stable and efficient way. More importantly, this corridor is expected to bring huge economic returns to Russia and may also become an important means for them to mitigate the economic impact of the war. During the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in June 2022, Russia's new Overland Grain Corridor Group and China Qingtong International Investment Company signed a cooperation agreement to prepare for the construction of 7 grain hubs and storage towers along the Siberian Railway. The group simultaneously built maritime terminals in the Far East and established close collaboration with Kazakhstan's grain hub to build a broad grain trade network. After a year of careful preparation, in June 2023, China Qingtong International received the first batch of soybeans transported via the China-Russia New Overland Grain Corridor, totaling 271.6 tons. These soybeans traveled thousands of kilometers and finally arrived in Manzhouli smoothly. After the results appear for further cooperation. In October 2023, Russian President Putin visited China's Belt and Road Summit Cooperation Forum. During this period, the two countries held in-depth discussions on food supply issues and finally signed a food supply contract worth $27 billion. According to the contract, Russia will provide China with a total of 70 million tons of grains, beans, and oilseeds in the next 12 years, ensuring an annual supply of no less than 5 million tons. The contract will be effective from 2024. It is worth mentioning that in April 2024, 2 trains loaded with grain departed from Russia and are expected to arrive in China in early May. In this regard, the Russian finance minister predicted that thanks to the opening of the new China-Russia Overland Grain Corridor and the launch of the new contract, Russia's annual grain exports to China will increase to 8 million tons in the future. With the gradual completion of future infrastructure projects, this number is expected to soar to 16 million tons. To this end, Russia plans to invest 4 billion rubles in the Zabaikalsk region to build a new railway cargo terminal, with the hope that its annual processing capacity will reach 150,000 TEUs. In addition, Russia also intends to widen the highway port from Argansk to Montenegro in China by 2026, and the freight capacity of the transformed channel is expected to increase 5 times. But ironically, China's earlier proposal to build a 23-kilometer-long border railway and 2 transfer stations between the two countries' ports was not taken seriously by Russia. Now, as China's position in the global grain market becomes more and more prominent, Russia seems to have to reevaluate this strategy and proactively propose relevant construction plans. This change in attitude is thought-provoking.